In this video, my focus is on the PMBOK 8th edition. However, I want to offer a different perspective, not centered on process, but the real shift in PMBOK 8th edition is in a set of key messages that many people are overlooking. If you pick up on these signals, the whole guide becomes much easier to understand and follow. Stay with me and I promise you, this will change the way you read and understand PMBOK 8. People who work with project management or want to work in this field have probably already heard about the PMBOK. Many people use the PMBOK as a reference and knowledge base for managing their project. It is the leading reference in the field worldwide, no doubt about that. PMBOK stands for Project Management Body of Knowledge. The PMBOK has been around since 1996. That was the first version, and it was the first one I knew. I took the PMP certification exam in 1999 based on that version. After that, new editions followed, and we are now on the 8th edition. I will not focus on the history of the PMBOK. If you find this interesting, leave a comment and I can make a video about it. I have experienced all versions using the PMBOK in my projects, in my classes, and in my publication. Over more than 30 years of experience, I have lived through the history and the transition of the PMBOK. I can share this with you if you are interested. Let me know. In this video, my focus is on the PMBOK 8th edition. However, I want to offer a different perspective, not centered on process. Of course, there are process changes, and they are important, but the real shift in PMBOK 8th edition is in a set of key messages that many people are overlooking. This message reshape how you interpret the whole guide and, more importantly, how to use it in real life. If you pick up on these signals, the whole guide becomes much easier to understand and follow. Stay with me and I promise you, this will change the way you read and understand PMBOK 8. A careful read of the PMBOK 8th edition and a comparison with previous editions shows significant change. And pay attention. It is important for project professionals to observe this because the change reflects a change in the market, which were observed by the people who created the PMBOK 8th edition. It can be confused, but it's not. In other words, the PMBOK 8th edition is a consequence of market change and will also impact the market and the way people work on projects. So as a professional, you need to understand that. You see, this one is the PMBOK 2000. This one is the 6th edition. You can see the difference. And this one is the PMBOK 8th edition. So I don't have the first edition printed, unfortunately, but you can see the difference between all of them because, the contents change over time. So you can see one was thin, another one is much more, and then this one, the new one, is lighter than the other one. So in this video, I will not focus on process. I will focus on the main changes in my perspective that you should understand to better understand the PMBOK. So I prepared this iconographic, and you can see the whole thing here. So I will show you step by step in order to make it easier, okay? The first change in the PMBOK 8th edition is the concept what a project is. From the beginning, the definition of a project was a temporary effort undertaken to create a unique product or service. It was from 1996 until 2024. That is, for many years, this was the official definition. But now, in the 8th edition, the definition of a project becomes a temporary initiative in a unique context undertaken to create value. It is still temporary, meaning It has a beginning, middle, and end. That's a project, right? But it brings the idea of a unique contest. It's no longer a unique product or service, but the contest is unique. For example, if you build a standard house in Brazil and then build the same house in another country, even the product is the same with the same requirements, but the legislation, climate, geographic condition, team, and so on will be different. So it will impact the way you develop the project. It is important to understand that because PMBOK reinforces even more the idea of tailoring, that is customization. Tailoring was already present in PMBOK 7th edition, but now it is stronger. We will talk about tailoring. By the way, I am Margarete Carneiro. I've spent more than 30 years working with portfolios, programs, projects, and PMOs in practice, not just in theory. I've been a volunteer with PMI Project Management Institute since 1999 and was the first president of a chapter, held multiple leadership roles, and served 6 years on the PMI Global Board. Today, I'm part of the board of the Agile Alliance, founded in 2001 by the signatories of the Agile Manifesto. So I breathe, I write, and I live portfolio program and project management, PMOs, and agility in my daily basis. And that perspective shapes how I see the evolution of our profession. Project management functions don't belong to one person. In earlier PMBOK editions, the project manager, even with different titles and levels of authority, was usually described as the person who centralized management and leadership responsibility for project success. In the PMBOK 8th edition, there is a clearer message. Project management is a set of functions, and these functions can be performed by one person, a team, or a combination of roles in the organization. Examples of these functions, there may be others, include providing control and coordinations, requesting and managing feedback, facilitating and supporting the team, developing the work, applying expertise, providing directions and organizational insights, providing resources. Why does this matter? Because these functions are essential to coordinate efforts, align decisions, and improve project success efficiently and effectively. The key point is not who performs them. The key point is that they must be covered in some way. And it is a key point. This is one of the reasons PMBOK became more flexible and less prescriptive. Each organization can tailor how work is organized and who takes on each function depend on its context and approach. This fits any approach or framework, and it is especially relevant for self-organized teams where leadership and coordination are shared. The message is simple. Project management is a capability, not just a job title. This also helps you see why PMBOK 8 is not designed only for predictive projects, but also for adaptive or agile and hybrid projects. We speak about that just to clarify about predictive, adaptive, and hybrid, just to make sure we are speaking the same language. Predictive approach, you can define the scope early and plan in more details before execution. For example, a wedding ceremony and party. You can understand and know in advance deliveries, dates, costs can be planned in advance. So you can have a whole plan before. Adaptive approach or agile work is iterative. The scope becomes clearer over time through frequent feedback and successive value delivery. One example is developer software. And hybrid approach is a combination of predictive and adaptive elements. Use each where it makes more sense. For example, a construction project may follow a predictive plan for the building structure and timeline, while using an adaptive approach for technologies such as elevators, security system, and smart infrastructure. areas that benefit from testing, learning, and adjustment. The key message here is PMBOK 8 supports all three because real projects rarely fit on one box. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. Another thing that is different on PMBOK 8th edition is about roles. Instead of using the term project manager or project leader, the PMBOK 8th edition used the term project management team. But before that, I want to highlight the project management competence triangle. Okay? It includes the knowledge that the project management team must have. If you see the triangle, you see the ways of working, knowing different types of approach and ways of working, being versatile enough to choose tools and practice according to the context. Another one is power skills that include emotional intelligence, adaptability, leadership, communication, and so on. And the third one is business acumen, knowledge of the organization's business, strategy, marketing, and so on. So one important thing that the PMBOK brings is the definition of project management roles. It no longer talks about one project manager, but yes, about a project management team, which may be composed of one or more people. This team may be performing several of the functions already mentioned, and others. Titles, compositions, and functions may vary. Once again, the PMBOK remains flexible to be used by different approaches and for proper tailoring to the organization or the different frameworks. Other roles remain like sponsors, customer, project teams. You see, PO, there is a product owner, can be a product manager, no matter, and end users, etc. Another thing is the mindset. The mindsets are value-driven, productivity, and ownership. The PMBOK reinforces that performance domains, process, and methods are important, sure, but mindset is important to understand, to be understood, because it's where and how we behave and do actions during the project. Context should guide choices. The management team must decide consciously and not act mechanically by simply following process. So it's very important to understand the mindset and incorporate those mindsets in your mind. Okay, those mindset you can divide or unfold into two principles. It is important to highlight that the PMBOK 7th edition already worked with principles. There were 12 principles, and now they have been reduced to 6. But nothing was discarded. This happened because some principles were consolidated or incorporated in another sections or performance domain. There is an appendices in the PMBOK 8th edition that explains this very well, so you can see there. The 6 principles are: adopt a holistic view, focus on value, embed quality, be an accountable leader, integrate sustainability, build an empowered culture. Let's start with the first one, adopt a holistic view. View the project as a system and not as isolated task. Consider the broader context, align with organizational strategy, and proactively manage complexity, uncertainty, and risk. The second one is focus on value. Success starts with purpose. More important than delivering something is ensuring that this delivery generates value from stakeholders during and after the project life cycle. The third one is embed quality. Quality as an attitude, not as expansion. Quality must be embedded into processes, decisions, and deliverable, not just checked at the end. So incorporate quality. Be an accountable leader. Lead with responsibility and awareness. This includes integrity, honesty, self-awareness, respect, humility, availability, flexibility, and commitment to shared leadership. Yes, you can have other leaders. Integrate sustainability. Think beyond the project itself. Consider Consider environment, social, and economic impacts, seeking to avoid, minimize, restore, or compensate negative aspects through the project. Think about that. Build an empowered culture is the sixth one. Create an environment that empowers teams and stakeholders. Encourage proactivity, collaboration, diversity of knowledge and experience, and align around shared objectives. So it's very important to understand those 6 principles. Okay? Be aware that a project manager or a team that must understand that to act accordingly. Up to this point, people, we have shown what was included at the first part of the PMBOK 8th edition. It includes functions, roles, mindset, and principles, value delivery, and project. You may ask me, how so, Margaret? Yes, the PMBOK is made up of 2 parties or 2 books. One is the standard, which has ANSI certification, that's from ISO, and the guide, which supports practical application. So we saw the first part, the standard, and now we understand the second part, that is the guide. In the guide, we will address topics such as performance domains, focus areas, and tailoring. At the end, we will also talk about inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques. In general, the standard guides thinking. It is standardized and certified and make us how to behave. The guide guides practice. Let's start now with the guides. The PMBOK 8th edition brought process back, which were not included in the 7th edition, and I consider this important because it helps with implementing practices in the real world. The PMBOK 8th edition includes 7 performance domains, 5 focus areas, and 40 processes. The focus areas used to call process groups, and they are initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, and control, and close. Okay, the 7 performance domains are governance, scope, schedule, finance, stakeholders, resources, and risk. Well, the focus areas should be, as I told, used to be called process groups. And I told you they are initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, and control, and close. Many people who knew PMBOK from previous edition may think it is the same thing with different name, but I don't think so. The subtle change shows an intention not to be so predictive, and that's not enough to follow process as a checklist in a linear form. Focus areas require continual attention. They are revisited all the time and do not end in a definitive and linear way. This brings more flexibility and allows the PMBOK to be used for approaches beyond predicted ones. So it is different. You have to understand that. Okay? Let's see the performance domains in details. Governance addresses how the project is authorized, integrated, aligned with strategy, directed, and closed. It includes decision-making, integration among the other domains, integrated change control, aligned with organization policies, and much of procurement. For those familiar with older PMBOK versions, it replaced integration and absorbed much of procurement. Scope is another one and defines and controls what will be delivered, product server result. It includes requirements, project scope, product scope, scope validation, and WBS for predictive way of work. Schedule address activities, flow, and delivery cadence. It includes interactions, iterations, release dependence, and time commitments. Finance address the financial visibility of the project, not just costs. It includes costs, budget, return on investment, and financial impact. In previous version, it was called cost. Now it is finance, which makes sense because a project is always an investment. Stakeholders manage people, interests, expectation, and communication. It is interesting to note that communication was absorbed into this domain, which makes sense. Communication is a human phenomenon. It serves to engage and keep people informed. Resources include people, teams, and other resources required for the project. Risks manage uncertainties, both positive and negative. This has not changed much. It has always been a very important area. Note that quality, which used to be a knowledge area in older PMBOK edition, is no longer one and has become a principle, part of mindset we discussed earlier. The 10 knowledge areas were consolidated or absorbed into performance domains, become 7 in the PMBOK 8th edition. As I told before, the interaction among focus areas depends on the type of approach or way of working choosing. Here we have 2 examples. Predictive, explain the sequel. The sequel here is predictive, and you see that you can have initiation, then you have a huge planning part, and then execution, and then monitoring during the execution, and then at the end of the time you have the closing. So this is very common in predictive way. So you have engineer, procurement, let me see here with my glasses, construction, commission, and handover. So you have all the linear and approach that is predictive, and you have also what you call waterfall. Okay, so the focus areas happen in a specific way, like these waves here. Another example that you can use focus areas are in adaptive project or phase. You see the dynamics is completely different here. You have planning, execution in several iterations or sprints, let's say. So it's common to have a bigger amount of planning effort, but you have planning every time before you have a sprint. So this is an illustration that you can use the same focus areas in a different dynamic using an adaptive or project or adaptive phase. I have the matrix that consolidate all the process. You have here 40 process. If you see here, you have the domain that is governance, scope, schedule, finance, stakeholders, resources, and risk. We already talked about them. And you have the focus areas that is initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Okay? And you have the 40 process here. If you count here, I will read one by one, but one is initiate project or phase and this identify stakeholders. Those 2 processes you can do at initiated focus area. So you have a lot of planning process that integrate and align project plans, plan sources strategy, plan scope management, elicit and analyze requirements, define scope, develop scope structure, plan schedule management, develop schedule, and so on. I will not read all of them. It will be boring for you. But you can see here all the 40 process and when they are being performing, right? In which area you perform any of them or all of them, okay? So we can count here. I promise you, you have 40 processes here, and it consolidates all the domains, all the focus areas, and all the process, okay? So this is a very comprehensive summary of the guide, okay, the second part. In all of those 40 processes, if you see this guide here, you can see they are very detailed. So you can see all the inputs, all the tools and techniques, and all outputs. This is a random example that I put here for you, like monitor and control schedule. If you see here, for example, you have scope baseline. That's typical from predictive projects, right? You have product backlog. That's typical from agile approach. And you have critical path method that's also very predictive. And you have backlog refinement. So if you see here, you have a lot of inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques that can be used in different approaches. Okay? And more, there is etc. at the end of all process. That means that you can have other inputs, you can have other outputs or other tools and techniques. So it's to show that's not final. It can be more and more than they show here. So each of the 40 processes is described in the guide with input, tools, and techniques and outputs. I won't go through them all here. I think it would be boring. You should read the PMBOK and use this as your reference. Ricardo Vargas also mapped this process in detail and offers it for free. You can download it. So here is the key point. These elements are not only predictive, you see that? In the same example, you may find different approaches I showed you, and you can use different from according to the approach that you are using, if you are using hybrid or not. So it's very interesting. So don't treat the process like a checklist. You have to tailor them to your context. It's a good news, but also it is not that much. It means there can be more elements. So you have to be prepared. It's up to the project manager or the management team to know these tools, practice, and techniques and use them in the best way according to context and need. Another thing is tailoring. Tailoring is very important, a concept very important that I told you before, and it was present in previously, but in this PMBOK it's completely important. It was based on this concept of tailoring. So tailoring, you can tailor, can be for the organization or for the project. Tailoring for the project depends on the product or delivery that you are doing, the project team, or culture. So a series of criteria can help you to understand how to tailor. Okay, I did a framework called MagFlex that is present in my course VPM, Versatile Project Management. That helps the profession to choose based on a series of criteria to what the approaches, or more important, what practices you can use for different situations. So tailoring is a very important concept in PMBOK 8th edition. In this sense, I created the course VPM, Versatile Project Management. It was early in 2024, even before the new version, because I believed, and I was right, that the market was moving in this direction. Project managers need to know how to navigate between approaches, understand frameworks, process, practice, and techniques, and apply them in the real world according to context. It also takes about AI, which the PMBOK 8th edition mentioned a lot. I will talk about that in a different video. The PMBOK 8 came with this proposal. It does not want you to follow rules. It wants you to make good choices. I created this infographic as a reminder of the main points of the PMBOK 8th edition. Believe that it can be useful. In the description, there is a link where you can download it. Reading the PMBOK remains essential. Every project management professional needs to know it, even if they are using only Scrum or another framework, because it is the main reference in project management and brings relevant and important practice. You never know when you will work in an environment that requires strong stakeholders management, for example, or business case development, or cash flow analysis, or more robust risk analysis. So PMBOK covers a full arsenal of inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques that can be useful in your professional life. This video is an invitation to reflect on the philosophy of the PMBOK 8th edition. If you have any questions, suggestions, or disagreements, leave them in the comments. I will be happy to answer. Follow me for more information. Best regards to everyone.